Y'all ready? Yeah. Let's go. Come on.
Tiger Rag Radio is on the air.
Let's crank this thing up.
We're statewide, breaking down the latest happenings with LSU athletics.
This is us.
Hear from the coaches,
Put together a defense that puts us in a position to win the SEC.
the players,
Having fun and we working, baby. That's it, man.
the recruits,
Show some passion and some heart.
and those who cover the Fighting Tigers of LSU and the
All
SEC.
those things are going to be there, which are important.
It's 2 hours of nonstop LSU
What
talk.
a privilege. I mean, you get to represent LSU.
Tiger Rag Radio is brought to you by Cummins. Cummins creates power solutions that the world depends on. Helm Paint and Decorating. The paint experts of Louisiana. Louisiana Beef Industry Council. Max Home. And the East Baton Rouge Parish Library. Get ready to talk Tigers with producer Jackson Blackman and hosts Todd Horn, Jeff Palermo, and Glenn Guilbeau.
Few great players that are better people than they are players.
This is Tiger Rag Radio, live from Super Chevy Dealers Studio.
And good evening, everyone. Jeff Palermo, along with the editor for Tiger Rag Magazine, Glenn Guilbeau. Todd Horn has the night off, and we are so glad that you can join us here on Tiger Rag Radio. We're here with you every Tuesday night for most of the folks that are listening to us on Tuesday nights. We're also on at KFNV on Wednesday afternoon over in not WSLA, but WGNO. We're also on over there at Saturday morning. So glad everybody can join us here on Tiger Rag Radio. Jeff Palermo and Glenn Guilbeau with you. And even though it is the middle of summer, we have a lot to talk about. The Major League Baseball draft is coming up this weekend. We're about ready to preview that. Ryan Clary from Locked On Nats podcast, he will join us since it looks like Kade Anderson will be the number 1 overall pick going to the Washington Nationals. We'll also talk a little Dylan Cruz here with Ryan as well. A lot going on with recruiting. LSU, as far as football goes, LSU had a very good 4th of July weekend. So we'll hear from Zach Nagy, SI on LSU. He'll join us later on in the hour. We'll hear from David Franklin, the head football coach at Haynesville. Isaiah Washington from Haynesville is committed to LSU. SEC Media Days next week. Chris Gordy, he'll join us in hour number 2 from the Locked On SEC podcast. And then Ronald Dupree, the former LSU Tiger and longtime NBA player, he will join us. He, of course, is back with the LSU men's basketball program, and he is the new GM of LSU men's hoops. So looking forward to catching up with Ronald Dupree in hour number 2. But Glenn, I think this is the first time that me and you have done a show since your induction into the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame, and congratulations once again on that.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Fun weekend in Natchitoches?
It was. Natchitoches is a little known town in South Louisiana. It's kind of a secret. It's a pretty cool place to go to. It kind of reminds me of Fairhope, Alabama, but it's not on the Gulf or not on the Mobile Bay. It's on Cane River Lake, which is pretty cool, right there on Front Street, and there's a lot of restaurants and bars, and the Hall of Fame is nestled right in there, so it's really pretty neat, and big turnout. Nick Saban was there, John Brady, Herb Vincent, old friend of mine, and of course Andrew Whitworth. That was a lot of fun. He's a great speaker, and yet another former LSU athlete who's in the media and very good. Like Todd Walker and Ben McDonald and so on. But no, it was a fun weekend for sure. Yeah.
All right, let's get right to it. Let's bring in our first guest of the night. That's Ryan Clary from Locked On Nats, the Locked On Nats podcast, as the Nationals have the number 1 pick. So they are on the clock Sunday night, and it's expected they'll take Kade Anderson, and we'll get Ryan's perspective on it. And Ryan, thanks a lot for joining us here on the Max Home Hotline. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing well, guys. It's been a busy 48 hours at the Washington Nationals because they've blown out their manager and their president. So things are crazy.
Yeah, I was shocked to see what happened just, a week before? And I understand the MLB draft is different than the NFL draft, but could you imagine, firing your general manager in football, 8 days or 10 days before the draft? I don't think it would happen in football, but in baseball it has. Mike Rizzo, Davey Martinez, the manager for the Nationals, fired. Both of them helped bring a World Series championship to the Nationals in 2019, but since then it's been tough sledding for the Nats. First of all, let's get your reaction to that and the fact that Mike Rizzo, who he wasn't just a general manager, he was the president of baseball operations. Is that right, Ryan?
Yeah, Mike Rizzo was the president of baseball operations. I believe he has held that title since 2013, I believe, is when he took on the president title. But before that, since 2009, he was the general manager. And he's been the guy calling the shots for well over the last decade, nearly 2 decades at this point. So, yeah, when Mike Rizzo is blown out, I mean, it was a pretty jarring decision. A lot of people were surprised with it. But overall, I think that it was the correct decision. We can get into the timing of it and kind of how it's weird. Like, again, you guys were saying it a week before the MLB draft, and you blow out your president of baseball ops, who has been here for well over 15 years. It's a weird look. But again, if you look at the past few seasons, I mean, Mike Rizzo has not been able to develop talent specifically through the MLB draft. So that's kind of been his downfalls of late because, again, the talent on paper right now, it looks good, but it's not equating to wins, and that's why you see Davey Martinez, who also went out the door. So Davey wasn't that big of a surprise, but Mike Rizzo was, although I do think that both were pretty deserved at this point in time.
So who will be calling the shots? Who's going to make the final decision on draft day?
It's going to be the interim GM. They named him Mike DiBartolo. He's been with this organization for a few years. He's kind of more of an analytics guy, kind of a younger breed here in the nation's capital. And DiBartolo, he's got that analytics background. So I think, again, making that selection number 1 overall, I would like to think that the Nationals already have a good idea of who they are going to take. I'm not sure if Mike Rizzo is being fired is going to change that selection, but I do think it may kind of bring up some questions over this next few days and kind of determine what they're going to do with that number 1 pick. So we'll just have to see. But I mean, you guys were saying it best. I think they do have their eyes set on Kade Anderson at this point, and they should. He's a great talent.
Kade Anderson was just named the top male athlete of the year in Louisiana, all sports, by the Sugar Bowl. So do you feel you still, despite the turnover and the wholesale changes there with the Nationals front office, your gut feeling is they're still going to take Kade Anderson because the people that have had their eye on him are still there?
Yeah, I think they're going to take Kade Anderson. I mean, Kade Anderson right now, you guys, I don't know how deep in the MLB draft you are, but there really is no clear consensus number 1 like we saw with Paul Skeens and Dylan Cruz. Like, those were the 1 and 2 guys a few years ago, and everyone knew that they were going to go 1 or 2. So this year it's a little bit different, but I think Kade Anderson, what he did in the College World Series, again, that means something to me, having a complete game shutout. I mean, he was dominant on the biggest stage in college baseball. I think that means a lot. And also just being able to come back from Tommy John surgery a few years ago to put up the season that he had this year. And again, I think he's kind of a safe pick in this draft. And for the Nationals and what they need a safe prospect. They need to add to the system right now. And I think Kade Anderson, he's probably your best option of landing a very good pitcher who's going to be at the front line of your rotation for hopefully the next decade plus, but also provide a little bit of a safety net. And if let's say he's the worst version of himself, I think he'll be still a decent major league starter for, again, the next decade or so.
What do you think? What's the window of salary and bonus you think he'll get?
As far as Kade Anderson goes, I mean, I think that he'll probably get the top dollar amount. I'm not entirely sure how much that could equate to. I don't know if it's going to break Paul Skeens' record at this point, but I mean, he's going to get the most, I would like to think, at number 1 overall. Ethan Holiday, who's the son of Matt Holiday, brother of Jackson Holiday with the Orioles. I mean, he's probably the only guy really in that picture who might get more money than Kade Anderson, but I would like to think that Anderson has probably separated himself at this point in time. He'll probably get the most money. I'm not entirely sure what the value will be at that point, but he'll probably get the most in the draft. I can tell you that much.
Why would the Nationals pick? And you've kind of answered this already, so maybe I'm not plowing new ground here. But why would the Nationals go with Kade Anderson over a guy like Ethan Holiday, the top high school prospect in this draft, or maybe some of the other left-handers that are in this draft as well, especially guys that have pitched on the collegiate level, like Jamie Arnold from Florida State and Liam Doyle from Tennessee.
Well, I'm sure you guys are very familiar with Liam Doyle. I love Liam Doyle personally, but just to kind of answer it, like the Nationals and what they need right now is they need safety. The reason why Mike Rizzo was just blown out is because they took big swings in these prospects, and he has not hit in his first-round picks for the past few seasons. And a guy that you guys are very familiar with is Dylan Cruz. I mean, Dylan Cruz, we love Dylan Cruz in town. We don't think he's going to be as bad like the numbers say that he has been so far, but still, like, this guy was a no-brainer, was going to hit in the major leagues. He was going to hit in the minors, and he did not. Like, he has struggled so far.
Yeah.
And I'd like to believe this is not a Dylan Cruz issue. This is a Washington Nationals issue. So I think right now you got to go with the safest guy. And I think that's Kade Anderson because, again, you're kind of in job-saving mode at this point. You've got an interim GM here in town. You have to kind of go make a splashy move, but yet also make a safe move. And I think Kade Anderson, that's kind of what he is at this point for the Nationals. So I think it makes sense.
I'm surprised Dylan Cruz has struggled the way he has struggled because as soon as he walked on LSU's campus as a freshman, he was an outstanding player. And even watching him through the minors, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but like his minor league stats were not, I mean, they didn't pop off the page when you looked at him, but I know he was progressing and he was developing. But what is it? And now he's been on the injured list here since May 20th with an oblique strain. So that's obviously slowed him down. But before that injury, he was only hitting 196 on the season in 45 games. So what has it been? What's the reason why Cruz has struggled like he has?
You know, with Dylan Cruz, and again, going back to his LSU days, he crushed the fastball, and he was not very good with the off-speed pitches. And, of course, if you're doing that in the college game, once you get up to the majors and just everything that these pitchers have nowadays, you're going to get exposed with that. And he just hasn't been able to really adjust up to this point. Now, I'm of the belief that I think Dylan Cruz is still a very special talent. I think he's a very good hitter, and I think he will figure it out. But it's just a matter of seeing these pitches over and over again and making some adjustments in his swing, which he has already done. It just hasn't necessarily worked out so far. And again, I think this injury, while it's a really tough one to have an oblique injury as a hitter, and especially as someone who's got a little bit of power, he's got some speed, but he plays a position in right field where you're going to have to be athletic. And I think that kind of hinders him just a little bit. And there's also, this was a lingering issue for about 2 weeks before he kind of re-injured it again. They shut him down, and they're just trying to get him healthy at this point. They'll have him go to a rehab assignment here in a few weeks, hopefully get right, and then have him come up in the majors. But, I mean, just kind of going back to it, like, I've been surprised with it, too. I mean, we've had a lot of talks here in town with Dylan Cruz and kind of, like, what's gone wrong. Because, again, like, this seemed like the safest pick even before Paul Skeens. Like, we thought that this guy was going to be a star right away, and it just has not really seemed that way at this point. So here in town, we kind of think it's a Nationals problem because, again, Dylan Cruz just seemed like the guy. It doesn't necessarily make sense. So not sure if that answers your question entirely because we're asking ourselves that same question at this point.
Did he come close to going to the minors? Or I remember before his first matchup with Paul Skeens early this season, there was talk then, but has that almost happened a couple of times?
I don't think so. I don't think the talk was about him going down because, again, if the Nationals, and looking back on April, when some people had hope, some people thought that the Nats would maybe hover around 500, maybe sniff 80, 85 wins, and maybe, just maybe, make an October push there. I think that we would have to win with Dylan Cruz and not without him. So I don't think that was ever going to be the case. If he was really, really struggling, like, again, I mean, he was at certain points before he got hurt, I think then maybe it would be a conversation. But I don't think it was ever a real consideration from the Nationals brass because they know how important he is to this team and really how important he is to this organization. He's a hell of a ball player.
And just to wrap it up here, Ryan, Cole Henry has been a nice addition to the bullpen, hasn't he? Former LSU Tiger.
Cole Henry is awesome. I mean, first off, not sure how much time you guys have spent with the LSU baseball team, but what a guy, too.
Yeah.
I mean, Cole Henry is awesome. I mean, he's been a pleasant surprise. He's had a ton of injuries here in town, and, of course, he's done well in the bullpen. I think he'll stay that way.
Yeah. Unfortunately, his 2020 season at LSU cut short because of COVID, so LSU never really got to appreciate Cole Henry as much as I think we could have if we didn't have COVID. But, Ryan, thanks a lot for joining us, man, and hopefully Dylan Cruz turns it around, and hopefully Kade Anderson works out for the Nationals. But he was something else this year. The jump in development from a year ago to where he is now, quite incredible. So we'll see if it can continue. Thanks for your time, Ryan.
Of course. Thank you, guys.
Ryan Clary, the host of Locked On Nats. So, again, the Major League Baseball draft Sunday night. We'll keep the draft talk going when we come back on Tiger Rag Radio from the Super Chevy Dealer Studio.
Welcome to the Chevy Lightning Round. Guess the clues to win. First team, you're up.
Powerful, commanding, unstoppable.
Silverado.
Adventurous, fun, techie.
Trailblazer.
Stylish, nimble.
Trax.
Innovative, electric.
Blazer EV. Lightning Round champions. You've guessed all the right Chevy clues.
Wherever the year takes you, explore it together in the Chevy of your choice. See your Super Chevy dealers today.
Tiger Rag Radio.
The details do matter. Every step, every hand on the ground, every route, everything that we do has a purpose. We are really focused, and our attention to detail is going to be unmatched.
We'll talk some football recruiting in the second half of this first hour of the show. Let's keep it on the MLB draft talk. So Kade Anderson, likely, if he doesn't go number one, he'll be a top 3 pick, that's for sure. Anthony Ianson, first round, second round pick. Well, he should be picked in the first round.
Yeah, possibly early second round. He's listed as 49 or 50, but he has a chance to go late first round or sandwich pick,
Right. The two guys that I think will end up having the biggest decisions to make when it's all said and done are pitchers Chase Shores and Ethan Fry. I mean, both of those guys are going to get drafted relatively high, anywhere within the first 3 or 4 rounds, and they'll sign a 6-figure signing bonus, and off they go to professional baseball. But both of them can really increase their stock considerably, especially a guy like Chase Shores, if he comes back and this time sticks as a starter, and with Nate Yeskie watching over him, helping him develop, instead of a 6-figure signing bonus, he could be getting a signing bonus like Kade Anderson is going to get, which is going to be somewhere around $7 million a year.
Right. Paul Skeens broke the record at $9.2 million 2 years ago. You would think Kade would be in that $7 million, $8 million range. But, this is what's so interesting now, because before NIL, if you're Chase Shores, hey, I've been at LSU 3 years, I'm coming off an injury, I can get better, but I want to get better while I'm being paid. Right. So I'm going to go pro. Yeah. Well, now he can get better under the watchful eye of Nate Yeskie, and they're going to make sure he doesn't get hurt again, whereas pro baseball, not so much all the time. So, I could see him making some good money at LSU, coming back, and he's got to be look what Kade Anderson did in 1 year.
Right.
So Chase could conceivably be the Kade Anderson of next year and become a top 5 pick, you know. So, but everything I heard in Omaha was that he was leaving, but man, that would be something to think about. If put yourself in his shoes, I mean, he could really, because now, he's probably a second-round pick.
Yeah.
You know, or who knows, maybe a first-round pick. But he could improve himself by being an SEC weekend pitcher and become a high first-round pick. And now Ethan's the same thing. Before NIL, I'm going to go pro and make some money, but he could make some good money at LSU and become more of a position player, which he hasn't been, and then improve his draft stock. So I could see where there's a good argument for each of them to stay.
Yeah, I think those are the two big. You may say, well, what about Chris Stanfield? I look at a guy like Chris Stanfield who offensively, I think he hit about as well as he can possibly hit, Glenn. I mean, what did he hit? 330?
Yeah. Best SEC hitter for him.
Yeah. I mean, look at what happened to Michael Braswell, right? I mean, look at where his average, and not to say, Stanfield could dip like that, but all it takes is, him, if he decides to come back, he hits 270, 260. And the other thing is I don't know if there's a spot, as much as Jay Johnson loves Chris Stanfield, I don't know if there's a spot for him in the outfield. Because I think if you ask Jay, who would you rather have, Chris Stanfield or Ethan Fry, he would say Ethan Fry. I'd like to have Ethan Fry in left, Derek Carriel in center, and Jake Brown in right.
Exactly, yeah. And, I think you're right. Unlike Chase Shores, Stanfield probably can't expect himself to do much better than he did. He's kind of topped out. He won a national championship. Might as well take off, and see what you can do. And Ethan, like we said, is a little different because he can play a position now. And that was his first healthy year. So, who knows what and he didn't start all year. Who knows what kind of numbers he can put up next year as an everyday player and another year of health. But, that happens sometimes too. Like they replace a player and then the player decides, hey, I'm going to come back.
Yeah, well, I think that's what happened with Michael Braswell because the whole idea was Tanner Reeves was going to be most likely your third baseman in 2025. But Braswell comes back and, well, you played the better defender.
Right,
so,
and his draft stock probably will be less than it was last year, but he does have a ring, and he's not a first rounder anyway.
No.
So he's got a good shot because he's versatile, and we know he can hit.
Yeah, he could. It was one of those situations when you're not getting consistent at bats. You can get yourself in a big-time slump, and that's what exactly happened.
Only takes a month.
Yeah. All right, let's take a break. We'll get into some football recruiting when we come back here on Tiger Rag Radio.
July is jumping at your East Baton Rouge Parish Library. Discover new ways of researching your family history. Learn how to market your small business. Enjoy programs and performances for all ages. We've got it all. For more details, go to ebrpl.com. That's ebrpl.com.
Now more Tiger Rag Radio, live from Super Chevy Dealers Studio.
Back here on Tiger Rag Radio. Hot outside, and the recruiting season also heating up as LSU has 14 commitments now for its 2026 class. And here to talk about it is our good friend Zach Nagy from SI on LSU. And he joins us on the Max Home Hotline. Zach, thanks a lot for joining us. Hope your 4th of July was a good one. I know you were busy as LSU was able to reel in some commitments.
Yeah, my man. First of all, I appreciate you for having me on as always. It's a great time talking ball with you guys. And LSU's were kind of booming on the recruiting trail, right? July 4th holiday is one where you start to see a lot of these recruits pop. That June stretch of official visits sets the tone for what's to come. July 4th is one where a lot of these guys like to shut things down and go public with a commitment. We saw LSU get 2 of their own on July 4th, and business is booming in Baton Rouge.
Well, if you don't mind, let's go back a couple days before that when Trenton Henderson, some people have him as a 5-star defensive end out of Pensacola, selected LSU. This is a big one. You got Tristan Keys, who's the 5-star wide receiver, arguably the number 1 wide receiver in the country. And now you got Trenton Henderson, who is one of the top defensive end or edge rushers in the country. Tell us the story on LSU able to get the verbal pledge from Trenton.
Yeah, man. Trenton Henderson's a big one, like you alluded to there. A guy who's kind of hovering around that 6'4", 230-pound range, a big body going into his senior campaign, and a super quick, twitchy guy coming off the edge, and one that obviously is highly touted by a lot of SEC programs, was narrowing his focus to LSU, Florida, and, of course, the Texas Longhorns, and one where LSU really had to go to work down the stretch. The Florida Gators and Billy Napier had a ton of momentum in this one, and coming off an official visit, really thought that they might have been able to seal the deal. Fast forward to roughly 72 to 96 hours prior to going public with the decision, and LSU really put their foot on the gas here and started to up the ante on their resources for a guy in Trenton Henderson. So they got the deal done. He went public with his commitment, and it's a big one for this defensive line room, and specifically edge rushers coach Kevin Peoples, to go out and get a guy of Trenton Henderson's caliber. Like you said, a 5-star guy on a couple sites, a high 4-star on others. to lock in his pledge is a big one. And now this is a guy who can really set the tone for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, Trenton Henderson, a 5-star from Pensacola. That's tends to be Alabama country there, that panhandle. And Hattiesburg, Mississippi, too, man. Tristan Keys, the 5-star back in March. Who's some of the top assistants that are assistant coaches that are helping Kelly other than Peoples?
Yeah, man, you got to tip your cap to director of recruiting, Donovan Tate. Donovan Tate's doing a tremendous job on the recruiting scene right now. This is a Hattiesburg, Mississippi native, and so he's the one who's really set the tone to get a guy like Tristan Keys pledged to the program. Obviously, it's going to be a fun one to watch him kind of navigate his recruitment process down the stretch with Texas A&M, Tennessee, Ole Miss, etc., starting to kind of intensify their pursuit. But when you have a guy like Donovan Tate in your back pocket, who's a Mississippi native himself, specifically from the Hattiesburg area, it really puts you in a really solid position. But, of course, that's going to be a fun one to monitor down the stretch. But you got to tip your cap. Donovan Tate's been doing a really good job.
And I guess that's how they were able to get Bryson Cooley, or at least that they got the inside track, because Laurel, Mississippi is not very far from Hattiesburg.
Correct, Jeff. You're spot on right there. And you go and you look at that Mississippi kind of pipeline that they're starting to develop in that 2025 class. You got the number 1 offensive lineman in the state in Tyler Miller, who's also from that Laurel area. And then you start to look at this 2026 recruiting class, and then you got the number 1 and number 2 ranked offensive lineman in the state, with Emmanuel Tucker being number 1. And then you look at Bryson Cooley, who's number 2. So the pipeline's being built. They're doing a tremendous job, specifically in the trenches. You got Emmanuel Tucker and Bryson Cooley on board, Tristan Keys as well. It's starting to set the stage really, really well in this 2026 cycle.
Zach, who do you see as some possible candidates for LSU's next commitment or two, and when do you think that will be?
Yeah, Glenn, this next 48-hour stretch is a big one for the LSU program. Of course, all eyes are on 5-star athlete Lamar Brown, a Baton Rouge native who plays his ball right there on LSU's campus at University Lab. The number 1 athlete in America, a guy who shines on both sides of the ball in the trenches, was the number 1 interior offensive lineman, kind of spoke his wishes of playing defensive line in college. So you kind of got him listed as an athlete on most recruiting services, and a guy who's really getting kind of that red carpet treatment from LSU right now. You got LSU and Texas A&M battling down the stretch for his pledge. He goes public with a decision on July 10th at 12:15 p.m., ultimately one where you're going to see LSU and Texas A&M battle back and forth over the next 48 hours. And he's also going to be accompanied by DeAnthony Lafayette. He's also going public with a decision on July 10th. LSU starting to push all the right buttons there, but those are 2 targets to keep tabs on. They both go public within the next 48 hours. We'll see if LSU can kind of intensify their pursuit and get it over the finish line, but both of them are mulling over their options and have a bunch of SEC schools in the mix for their services.
What makes Lamar Brown so special, Zach?
Everything. This is a guy who is a Swiss Army knife in the trenches. He can do it all, man. 6'3", 6'4", 285-pounder who can really utilize his strength and leverage to keep defenders back. He's a super talented player, and he knows it. And there's a reason why you have so many SEC schools battling for his services right now, man. He is a tremendous, tremendous athlete. LSU, Texas A&M, Miami, Florida State, etc., are really trying to get him in the mix. It's a 2-team race between LSU and A&M, but there's a reason why he's so highly touted, and it's because of his strength and versatility in the trenches, of course.
What's up with July 10th? Why is that the key date for those 2 guys?
Yeah, that's their commitment dates. Both of them are set to make those decisions on July 10th. We'll see what happens with Lamar. Obviously, Texas A&M's kind of starting to intensify that push themselves, but DeAnthony Lafayette is also making a commitment decision on July 10th.
Hey, Zach, what's your impression of Brian Kelly hiring Kelvin Bolden, the coordinator of recruiting strategy at Ole Miss? They got so many titles now for some of these recruiting guys, but he is the 4th recruiting aide, if you will, from Ole Miss that Brian Kelly has hired in just the last 18 months. Austin Thomas, of course, hired in January of 24, and 2 others. What do you think of Kelvin?
Yeah, man. First things first, There are so many different titles nowadays, Glenn. I can barely keep up. And I'm kind of a youngster here trying to kind of poke around and see what I can get on these titles. And
Austin Thomas has had like 7 titles in 8 years.
Yeah, man, I'm sitting here struggling to keep up with who's who at this point. But nonetheless, Kelvin Bolden is a fantastic hire. And for me, one that's going to be kind of quote unquote slept on in the future. He's fantastic with relationships. And I know that nowadays relationships is kind of, people will say whatever, it's all about the money. And I completely understand that perspective. Everybody has a point when they say that. But at times, relationships are key. And that's Kelvin Bolden's strategy here. So tremendous hire, another guy who can help with that Mississippi pipeline. He's a Magnolia State native himself. So I love the hire. He can do a bunch of different things on the recruiting trail. I love that one for LSU. And obviously has a relationship with Austin Thomas during their time together with Ole Miss.
And Austin Thomas is becoming just more than a guy that identifies recruits. I mean, his role is expanding so much at LSU. It sounds like he needs a guy like Bolden to take on some of the duties that he once did.
Absolutely. When you look at a guy like Kelvin Bolden, he's great in the scouting department. He's great, obviously, in the recruiting trail and developing those relationships. But Austin Thomas is poking his head into so many different rooms at this point, whether it's NIL, roster reconstruction, developing relationships of his own.
Yeah.
I mean, he does so many different things. You might as well just call him a tax guy at this point because he's managing so much money.
Yeah.
He is such a challenging spot nowadays. But, of course, Kelvin Bolden is going to do a fantastic job in assisting Austin Thomas. It's a really good 1-2 punch for the future.
Zach, thanks a lot. Appreciate your time, man.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. You have a good one.
Thank you.
Zach Nagy, the publisher of LSU Tigers SI. We'll take a break. When we come back, Haynesville football coach David Franklin will join us. He'll talk about Isaiah Washington, another recent verbal pledge to the LSU Tigers. So we'll get to that when we come back. From the Super Chevy Dealer Studio, this is Tiger Rag Radio.
You should call that radio station and let him have it.
Good idea. 1-800-673-5555.
I want to be under the bright lights. I want to be on the Broadway stage.
Tiger Rag Radio is on now.
Back here on Tiger Rag Radio, Jeff Palermo along with Glenn Guilbeau, the editor for Tiger Rag Magazine, as we continue on from the Super Chevy Dealer Studio. And joining us now on the Max Home Hotline, the head football coach for the Haynesville Golden Tornado, David Franklin, joins us. Coach Franklin, thanks a lot for spending a few minutes with us tonight. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you.
Well, thanks for coming on. Let's talk about Isaiah Washington, who announced his commitment to LSU on the 4th of July. First of all, before we ask you about Isaiah Washington, the player, tell us about Isaiah Washington, the person.
Just a really good guy. He's been starting for us since he was a freshman, actually. He's just a fun kid. He likes to clown a little bit. He gets a little loose, but he's also can kind of be uptight sometimes. But he's just a really good, humble kid, all around good kid, pretty good student, and he just has fun playing the game. He actually started for us as a freshman. Kind of a young kid, but I could tell he had a lot of potential. And, we were struggling at the quarterback position a little bit, and, we gave him an opportunity. And I remember my son in particular coming to me and saying, Dad, you need to let him start. And I said, why? He said, because he's a leader. And I said, he's a freshman. He said, he's a leader. And I said, okay, I agree with you. I just wanted to hear it from somebody else. But he is. He's always been the kind of player. And he was a leader then, and he's even more of a leader now.
Well, that's great to hear. I mean, vocal leader and also a guy that leads by example.
Exactly. More just leading by example. He plays several sports when he gets through with football, which he plays both ways in football. And not only does he play both ways, he returns punts, returns kickoffs some, and he hardly ever leaves the field. But when he gets through with football, he goes straight to basketball, and which he starts in that. And I think they went to the 3rd round this year, and then he goes straight to track after that. And, he was the state champion in 2 events. Should have been 3 this year, but he's just a all-around really good athlete.
Yeah, I believe the 2 events that he won, the 110-meter hurdles and the triple jump, what did that do to help when it comes to his recruiting value, if you would, as far as what did that really all of a sudden once college teams saw, hey, man, this kid's fast and athletic, did the interest grow in Isaiah Washington after that?
Absolutely. I think that had a lot to do with it. He was a state runner-up in his freshman year in the 300 hurdles. He had some trouble, in the last few years with some tendonitis in his knee, and he actually had the fastest time in all classes, I think, this year in the 300 hurdles, but he got caught doing a lot of different events at state, and he just didn't run as well, didn't have a good day. But I think absolutely, that just proves that he is that good of an athlete. And, if I'm a football coach, that's the kind of kids that I want. And so I'm thinking that LSU kind of sees the same thing.
Now, he's 6'2", 170 pounds, somewhere around there. Right now, projected as a safety. You've mentioned he's been the starting quarterback there at Haynesville. LSU does not have a quarterback in next year's class just yet, but should we close the door on that possibility?
Yes, he's not a quarterback. I mean, no, I'll take that back. He's a really good – I think if he was going to play an offensive position, he'd probably play receiver for us. He's a really good quarterback, but he's a true safety. And I think he's going to be one of those guys that's going to be in the future. He's going to be 190, 200 pounds because he just has a wide frame, a big frame. He's long and has a lot of room to grow. So I think that, I think they obviously see that, he's still a little young, but I think that, there's he's really good right now, but you can see that there's a lot of future there. So, I think that's something that everybody sees. Has he been making the camp circuit this summer? Not a whole lot. I mean, he's done some visits to a couple of places. He really gets bothered by not being here with us and doing our workouts. So he's been here, pretty much the whole time. He has made some visits, not a whole lot of camps. He's a football player. He doesn't have to be a 5-star or whatever star. He's just a kid that can play football. And I think that he values that more than anything else.
He's led Haynesville to the state championship game the last 2 years, and there's a good chance your football team, Coach David Franklin's going to be back there because, or at least has a really good chance to get back to the Dome because of Isaiah Washington.
I don't know about because of Isaiah, but he certainly contributes.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it. And it seems like he is – I mean, you've been at Haynesville for a long time. I mean, is he one of the more athletic kids to come to compete there at Haynesville?
We've had a lot of athletic kids. I mean, honestly, we have. But, there's some that are just different. You got really athletic kids, and then you got really athletic kids that are 6'2". And so now you kind of have something a little bit different, God makes people different, and some people are just blessed in different ways than others. And he's one he just kind of has all the tools. So I just, I'm excited for his future because I think he's got a really, really bright future. And, I always thought that he was going to be this kind of athlete. I was a little worried about the recruiting process, and then all of a sudden it just kind of blew up for him. So we're just excited for him because I know that he has a really good future.
And Haynesville has sent a couple of kids to LSU, correct?
We have in the last few years. Joseph Evans, I think, was the last one, and he went in, I guess, 2019.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a while since then.
Yeah.
Haven't had any, even before that. We've had some back in the earlier years. I think we actually had a safety that played there back in the early 70s that was, I don't remember him, but I was told he was really good.
Well, Coach, you're one of the best in the business. Thanks a lot for your time. Really appreciate it. Good luck in 2025, and hope to see Haynesville back in the Dome.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for calling.
All right, that is the head football coach for the Golden Tornado, the Haynesville Golden Tornado, David Franklin, here on Tiger Rag Radio. More from the Super Chevy Dealer Studio when we come back on Tiger Rag Radio.
Tiger Rag Radio is back on the air, live from Super Chevy Dealer Studio.
Back here on Tiger Rag Radio, Jeff Palermo along with Glenn Guilbeau as we wrap up hour number 1 of the show, as we just had a great conversation there with David Franklin, a class act, a great high school football coach in Northwest Louisiana for the Haynesville Golden Tornado that have been to the state championship game now 2 years in a row, and good chance to be back again in 2025 with Isaiah Washington leading them. When you take a look at the team recruiting rankings for the class of 2026, for
LSU is up to number 10.
LSU
They were
is
12,
they're number 8 in one ranking, and then they're number 11
That's
in
right.
the other ranking.
Yeah.
The 247 Sports, they're ranked number 11 in the On three. Now On three and Rivals have combined, so you can say the Rivals are On three, or I don't know how they're branding themselves at the. I keep hearing them referring to themselves both ways, but LSU is number 8 with that. What's interesting is LSU is at 14 verbal commitments, but the schools that are ranked in the top 5 have like twice as many commitments than LSU.
So that shows they got some high quality there.
Yes. You also consider that LSU does not have a quarterback in this class yet. They do not have a running back in this class yet. So there's still a lot. Offensive line looks like they're in fairly good shape. You know, they got the 2 best offensive linemen in the state of Mississippi, and Emmanuel Tucker and Bryson Cooley. And then you have Jalen Chapman, the offensive guard from Warren Easton. He would be the 3rd offensive lineman. And then Bryson Martinez, the offensive tackle from East Ascension High School in Gonzales. So offensive line looks like they've shored that up. Of course, you have a guy like Richard Anderson, the defensive tackle from Edna Carr. That's a solid pickup. And I think the question is, can they keep Tristan Keys, the number 2 ranked wide receiver in the country out of Hattiesburg, Mississippi?
Right. And holes in a recruiting class aren't as significant as they used to be because they can always fill them up with the portal. And that's what's interesting about the hiring of Kelvin Bolden, the coordinator of recruiting strategy from Ole Miss. I mean, Ole Miss is focused for the last 4 years much more on the portal than the recruiting class. So I have a feeling Kelvin is going to be working probably more with the portal than with the high school recruiting as, Brian Kelly jumped from number 43 ranked portal class last year to number 1. And it sounds like he's going to, continue to focus as much or more on the portal. But he's an old school guy, and he's often said, he kind of favors recruiting the high school talent and using the portal to pick and choose. But he really kind of made his roster with the portal this year. It'll be interesting to see how he mixes and matches in this coming year.
And, of course, Thursday will be a big day, especially if they're able to keep the talented lineman out of University High. If they can keep him in Baton Rouge, that is going to be that's going to be huge in Lamar Brown if they're able to continue to keep him in the fold. So we'll have to wait and see on that. 12:15, he makes his announcement on ESPN, by the way. That's what U-High coach Andy Martin told me. So Lamar Brown making his decision at 12:15 on Thursday. We'll take a break. We'll talk SEC Media Days when we come back on Tiger Rag Radio.
Y'all ready? Yeah. Let's go. Come on.
Tiger Rag Radio is on the air.
Let's crank this thing up.
We're statewide, breaking down the latest happenings with LSU athletics.
This is us.
Hear from the coaches,
Put together a defense that puts us in a position to win the SEC.
the players,
Having fun and we working, baby. That's it, baby.
the recruits,
Show some passion and some heart.
and those who cover the Fighting Tigers of LSU and the
All
SEC.
those things are going to be there, which are important.
It's 2 hours of nonstop LSU
What a
talk.
privilege. You get to represent LSU.
Tiger Rag Radio is brought to you by Cummins. Cummins creates power solutions that the world depends on. Helm Paint and Decorating. The paint experts of Louisiana. Louisiana Beef Industry Council. Max Home. And the East Baton Rouge Parish Library. Get ready to talk Tigers with producer Jackson Blackman and hosts Todd Horn, Jeff Palermo, and Glenn Guilbeau.
They're great players that are better people than they are players.
This is Tiger Rag Radio, live from Super Chevy Dealers Studio.
And welcome to hour number 2. Jeff Palermo along with the editor for Tiger Rag Magazine, Glenn Guilbeau. Glad you could join us on this Tuesday night, or if you're listening Saturday morning on WGSO in New Orleans or KFNV in Franklin. Not Franklin, but KFNV in Vidalia, Natchez area. Thanks a lot for listening to us.
And 106.7 The Ticket in
New
New
Orleans. Yeah. And then, of course, Talk 107.3 in Baton Rouge. You're listening to us tonight, along with the good folks over at ESPN Southwest, the Delta Media Radio Group in Lake Charles and Lafayette. Always glad to have everybody a part of the broadcast.
Garrett Nussmeier's hometown.
Yeah, KASO in Minden, also a longtime Tiger Rag Radio affiliate. So I want to thank everyone for being a part of the show. And football season, you could say, unofficially gets underway next week in Atlanta with SEC Media Days. And let's start to break it down. Chris Gordy for Locked On SEC podcast joins us here on Tiger Rag Radio. Chris, thanks a lot for spending a few minutes with us. We really appreciate it. I know you'll be in Atlanta next week, or at least I'm assuming you'll be in Atlanta, or at least you'll be keeping close tabs on it. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Yeah, I'll be out there, and hopefully I'll see Glenn out there. I got to let Glenn know I'm not much of a reader, Glenn. I only read during the summer by the pool, and I started your book last summer and didn't finish, so I picked it back up this summer, and I just passed the halfway point where the pictures are. So I just want to let you know.
Well, all right,
it's
man.
taken me about 2 years, but I'm finally going to finish this book.
How many national championships have they won so far?
I think we just got to 2,000.
Okay.
So I'm getting there.
All right.
That's
great. I appreciate that.
Well, Chris, it should be a fun week in Atlanta. I love the fact, first of all, we found out today who will be going along with the head coaches, and of course for LSU. I think it's a good group. You had to have Garrett Nussmeier there. Whit Weeks. He's
a media darling.
He's a media darling, and he always has some funny quips here or there, and he's probably going to tell a funny story about his brothers and all that kind of stuff. And Chris Hilton is he's an interesting guy in that, and he really talks well. He
doesn't say a lot, but when he does say something, every now and then he just jams you.
Yeah, and he's not afraid to I'm sure he's going to talk a lot about how frustrating his career has been at LSU in the sense that he just hasn't been able to stay healthy, and he's hoping that maybe this will be the year he's finally able to put it together. But out of the 16 teams that are going to be there, Chris, 11 of them are bringing quarterbacks, which I really like to see because let's face it, that's who we really want to talk to.
No doubt, and I think obviously the quarterback is the biggest star on the team, so most teams bringing their quarterback makes sense. We knew Garrett Nussmeier was going to go. I figured Whit Weeks because he's part of one of the leaders on that defense. I was surprised by the Chris Hilton name. I thought if they were going to bring a wide receiver, I thought maybe Aaron Anderson, who's been around a while, and maybe even outside, could have gone Caden Durham after the great freshman year he had last year, but. I started thinking about it. I know Chris and Flaugier have been very public with their relationship.
Yeah.
He's been doing media interviews and stuff, so I thought maybe they're playing to that where they can get a fun topic on the SEC network and shows like that. But you're right. You bring the quarterbacks, it's great, but I was a little surprised A&M did not bring Marcel Reed because that's a guy that came on towards the end of last year, and I thought that would be one of the guys that they would bring. But
LSU doesn't want to see him.
Yeah, he's a two-word swear word for LSU fans.
The toughest part with LSU last year was running quarterbacks. That's going to be Cade Klubnik's he's not a statue back there. He can run a little bit, so I'll be curious to see. We'll know week one. Can they stop running quarterbacks?
Yeah, obviously have to go up against Lenore Sellers again, who will be at SEC Media Days. But I would imagine a big story when it's all said and done, unless Lane Kiffin says something crazy, or even Brian Kelly. He's not afraid to throw some things out there and give the media something to chew on. But Arch Manning is going to be the story, right, Chris? That's what everybody is going to focus on and hear what he has to say.
Arch Mania is in full effect, and put me on that bandwagon. I'm a fan. Just getting to speak to him a couple times over the last couple of years, it's amazing how mature he is. He was obviously raised the right way, coached up the right way by the Manning family. I think he'll be a rock star that week. He will be the most in-demand player that everybody's going to want to interview and talk to. And again, I don't think he's not going to say anything controversial. He's a Manning. Like I said, he's been coached the right way. So, but yeah, I think Texas is bringing a great group. Anthony Hill was a linebacker that 3 years ago, A&M was in a dogfight with recruiting-wise. He ended up going to the Longhorns, and he's been a tackling machine for them. And then Michael Taff, who's the senior leader of that defensive backfield for Texas. So I like the group that Texas is bringing as well. If there was a number 2 rock star that's going, I think DJ Lagway is a guy that's going to capture the hearts of a lot of people. The Florida quarterback that, he was Mr. Texas a couple years ago out of Willis, right outside of Houston. And he's a guy that Billy Napier is banking on to be the face of his team and hopefully save his job once again. He did it once already last year. We'll see if he can do it again this year because Florida's schedule is absolutely brutal. But I like Lagway, and like I said, I think he'll be kind of second fiddle to Arch Manning.
Who do you think is going to be the best quarterback in the SEC this season?
Well, I mean, to me, it's got to be Garrett Nussmeier. I mean, he's the lone returning 4,000-yard passer in all of college football. And look, I don't want to put too much pressure on him, but let's be real, guys. I mean, the last 2 superstar quarterbacks at LSU, we came out of 2018 saying, yeah, Joe Burrow's a pretty good quarterback, and then he became a Heisman Trophy winner and was all-worldly in 2019. Same thing with Jaden Daniels. We came out of year 1 of him at LSU going, yeah, pretty good quarterback, and then year 2 let it fly and became a Heisman Trophy winner. So if Garrett took those steps this offseason, did the film study, worked with his new receivers, this offensive line does their job, I mean, if you're an LSU fan, the expectation is playoffs. I mean, 10-2 is the floor for LSU, at least expectation-wise. So, to me, it's got to be Garrett. Now, look, statistically, will Lane Kiffin throw it a ton, and Austin Simmons maybe leads the league in passing yards? Maybe. John Mateer at Oklahoma coming from Washington State, that's the big experiment. Does that translate to the SEC? If it does, he's going to be awesome. But to me, as far as expectations go, it's Garrett. Nobody coming back in college football this year has the skins on the wall that Garrett Nussmeier has.
And if Greg Sankey had listened to me years ago, Arch Manning might be coming to Baton Rouge this season to play LSU in the regular season, because I said that they should have made Texas and LSU permanent opponents because it's a natural rivalry. Austin, Baton Rouge, 2 capitals, they're border states. They haven't played a lot. The A&M LSU thing is kind of stale because they played for years before A&M made it to the SEC. And the way it is, Arch Manning is probably never going to play in Tiger Stadium, like his dad did and like one of his uncles did.
Yeah, well, they still owe him that return trip from 2020. Remember, the COVID year kind of sidelined that. And so, yeah, I mean, the next time they play has to be in Baton Rouge, and we'll see how they do the schedule, if we end up going to a 9-game conference schedule next year or stay at 8. But, if we stay at 8, the schedule's going to rotate, and theoretically you would play everybody that you didn't play the last 2 years, and that would put Texas on LSU's schedule in 2026. So
well, that would be cool.
We'll see how it works out.
Unless they meet in an SEC championship game this year.
LSU could potentially host him in a college football playoff game too.
Yeah, that would even be better. Arch Manning, Manning returning to Tiger Stadium in a playoff
in December.
That would be great.
Yeah,
because
not short on headlines on that one.
Yeah, because Archie, his last game at LSU was in December because that game was moved.
Yeah.
And that's when he had the broken arm, though. But how do you feel about the SEC Media Days getting back to Atlanta?
I was just going to say, I'm glad we have somebody as old as Glenn here that could be that historian to bring
yes,
back history.
I didn't cover Archie Manning's game, but I did listen on the radio.
Yeah. I thought you were with General Nealon in his graduating class, but
Weekly Reader, Highlights Magazine.
No, look, Atlanta is kind of the home away from home for the SEC. I mean, it was in Birmingham for so many years, and I love hearing the old stories of the old school SEC Media Days where it was, when Steve Spurrier was at Florida, you went up to a bar and you pulled up a bar stool and you said, "Hey, Coach, how's your team look this year?" And it's certainly grown from that throughout the years, but. No, Atlanta's a great spot. The College Football Hall of Fame, I mean, as great as it is, it's maybe not the best venue for this kind of thing because you get everybody, all the radio stations on Radio Row pinned up against the wall, filling up all the walkways. So it's a little bit of a difficult venue, but obviously everything in Atlanta within walking distance of downtown. I live here in Houston. I'd love to see it come here. It was great in Dallas last year. So, And then a lot of people have been pushing for New Orleans, but if I know the SEC media members, I mean, some of them may not make it to the press conferences the next morning if we go to New Orleans. So, Atlanta's a great spot. And like I said, if you've never been to the Hall of Fame Museum there, it's pretty special.
So, Chris, another big topic will be what should the future of the college football playoff look like, and the format, and how many automatic qualifiers and all that. Where do you stand on all that?
Well, it's looking like the push is more for the 5+11, and thanks to Brett Yormark for sharing his thoughts on that today at the Big 12 Media Days. Although nobody's going to really listen to him or the ACC. It's the SEC and the Big 10. They're the big boys at the table. They will decide what happens moving forward. But I get why they were pushing for the 4 automatic bids. It makes sense because the SEC is like, well, we added 2 monster brands in Texas and Oklahoma. We should have the most teams in. And the Big Ten goes, well, we added USC and UCLA and Oregon. Like, we should get some automatic bids. But that's the danger in expanding your conference. You create this bigger conference, you're not going to get as many people in every year. I think it's a moot point for the SEC. I think in most normal years, they would get 4 teams in anyway, just because of strength of schedule. But it does bring up a bigger topic of these non-conference games that the committee doesn't seem to care about. I mean, the last 2 national champions, Ohio State and Michigan, both played jokes of non-conference schedules. I mean, Michigan played like Bowling Green and UNLV, and Ohio State played Marshall, and LSU went and played Florida State. They went and played USC. They lose their season opener, and you're not getting any credit for that. The committee's not going, well, you played a tough team and you lost, so we'll give you the benefit of the doubt. No, like at the end of the day, all the committee cares about is just wins. So if you're LSU, start scheduling the Citadel. Start scheduling Southern, because that's all that matters week 1 is a win. And so, they got to go play one of the toughest non-conference games of week 1. Texas at Ohio State and LSU at Clemson are the 2 toughest non-conference matchups in week 1. And if you lose that game, the committee's not going to give you credit. This isn't like the college basketball selection committee where they go, look, Auburn lost to Gonzaga back in December. We got to give them credit for that one. Like, no, they don't do that.
Yeah.
So, To me, I think the 5+11 makes the most sense. It sounds like that's what most people in the SEC are going to be on board with. But I get why they were pushing for the 4 automatic bids. I just don't think it's going to happen.
To me, automatic bids goes against everything that is football. It's so non-competitive. You can't get an automatic bid. I mean, that's like these American Legion teams that get to host a tournament even though they don't make the tournament. So that shouldn't happen. But you're right. You really needed that early season non-conference game when it was just a 2-team playoff and a 4-team playoff to kind of break a tie or get your schedule ranking up. And that helped LSU a couple of times. Like in 2007, they had played Virginia Tech, West Virginia. That ended up really helping them. But with a 12-team playoff, you're right. They should play Nicholls State to open the season. They really should.
Well, look at Indiana. I mean, this is the reason why the SEC was pushing for 4 automatic bids. Indiana got in last year, and they played 1 ranked opponent all year, Ohio State, and they lost.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but everybody looked at Indiana. Well, they won. They're 11-1. So at the end of the day, again, people just they look at the win total. That's all that matters. It doesn't matter who you beat. The problem with that argument is not all schedules are created equal. You're going to have years where you play the tough teams in the Big Ten. You're going to have years where you avoid the good teams in the Big Ten because you got so many damn teams. You can't play everybody. So Texas last year had the benefit of the doubt. Texas avoided LSU and Alabama and South Carolina. And, they played Georgia and they lost. But, that's just kind of how these schedules are. They're not all created equal. And so it's not a level playing field. So that's why the SEC was saying, well, at least give us four tickets in. But like I said, I think if we're going just based on rankings, at the end of the day, the SEC is going to have 4 teams ranked in the top 12, and they're going to get them in.
Right, especially if Alabama doesn't lose to Vanderbilt and Oklahoma and Ole Miss doesn't lose to Kentucky. You got to win those games, and that's why those guys didn't get in.
And it's amazing. I don't know, what was it, 20 years ago, I guess? People hated the BCS formula, and now people are saying, you know what? Having computers help decide this is not a bad idea. It's just amazing how it's like the dog trying to catch its tail. We just kind of keep going in circles on this thing. But, hey, Chris, thanks a lot. Enjoy Atlanta. Love your stuff on the SEC, Locked On SEC podcast. And we'll talk to you again here soon.
Thanks, guys. And Glenn, if I finish the book this year, I'm hoping I don't have to carry it into next summer.
Finish it tonight, man. Finish it tonight.
Yeah, then get Glenn's autograph in Atlanta. How about that? All right, Chris, take care, man. There we go. Chris Gordy, good stuff. We'll be back after this here on Tiger Rag Radio.
Welcome to the Chevy Lightning Round. Guess the clues to win. First team, you're up.
Powerful, commanding, unstoppable.
Silverado.
Adventurous, fun, techie.
Trailblazer.
Stylish, nimble.
Trax.
Innovative, electric.
Blazer EV. Lightning Round champions. You've guessed all the right Chevy clues.
Wherever the year takes you, explore it together in the Chevy of your choice. See your Super Chevy dealers today.
You should call that radio station and let him have it.
Good idea.
1-800-673-5555. I want to be under the bright lights. I want to be on the Broadway stage.
Tiger Rag Radio is on now.
Back here on Tiger Rag Radio, we talked early on in the show as we are broadcasting from the Super Chevy Dealer Studio. We were talking earlier on in the show about how LSU football was getting some commitments over the 4th of July holiday. How about Garrett Nussmeier kicking off what is his final season at LSU, and he ends up getting engaged to his longtime girlfriend, who is an LSU alum herself. Ella Springfield is her name. She lives in Dallas. Those two tied the knot this past weekend, and
he proposed to her.
Oh yeah, excuse me. You're right.
Haven't set a date yet.
Yeah, haven't set a date yet, and but yeah, I don't know why I say tied or not, but yeah. So those two are engaged, and yeah, I know Nussmeier. It'll be interesting to hear from him on Monday. That's LSU goes Monday at the SEC Media Days. I mean, Garrett kind of says a lot of the cliche stuff that you hear.
He's well coached, too well coached.
But I think he'll have one or two good little things that I think a lot of people will. I mean, it was him and Will Campbell talking about, hey, it's time for us to win 10 games. It's time for us to get in the college football playoff, and they weren't able to accomplish it last year. But I would imagine he's going to say something to that effect, or something to the effect of, hey, I think we could have one of the best offenses in all of college football.
Yeah, and he was just at the Manning Passing Academy too, and I think he interviewed well there as well. I was in Omaha at the time, but I was in Natchitoches at the time, but he's definitely pretty sharp. I do remember last year at one point we were interviewing him after a game, and I think if Texas A&M lost, it meant LSU had a chance to get into the SEC championship game if they'd have beat Florida later. And he was real interested in that game, and he was asking us who won the game. You know, he kind of went out of that robot mode, but it's going to really be an interesting season to watch, because if Garrett has the type of season like Jaden Daniels and Joe Burrow had, he could be a top 1, 2, or 3 pick. Will the Saints be bad enough to where they can pick him? And there's his dad coaching over there.
Right.
It's going to be a shame if they have one of these 6-win seasons, but they're not in position to take him, and then Tyler Shaw is okay, and then we got to watch Garrett become the greatest quarterback. And there's never been an LSU quarterback that's become a starter for the Saints.
Yeah.
I don't think there's ever really been one that's even played much. Tommy Hodson was on the team briefly late in his career, but he was like a holder and stuff. You know? But that would just be a fairy tale.
It would be an interesting storyline. There's no doubt about it. I think the Saints will be pretty bad in 2025.
Okay.
But I agree. Part of it is, and I don't have the Saints schedule in front of me, but I just know in the NFC South, it's not a tough division, and so there's a chance for them to pick up some wins there and elsewhere. And you're right, they can end up winning 6 games, and that kind of pushes them out
unless they make a trade.
Yeah.
I mean, and you from a marketing standpoint, it would help the Saints. And Garrett's mom is from Lake Charles. He was born in Lake Charles. And his dad's coach in New Orleans, so it's almost too good to be true.
Yeah, well, it'll be a fun to see how that all works out, but expecting a big season from Garrett Nussmeier, and I'm sure he's going to take a few questions at SEC Media Day about, hey, The last two returning starting quarterbacks at LSU won Heisman's. What do you think, Garrett? I'm sure that question's going to come fast and furious at him during his time in Atlanta. We'll take a break. Let's switch topics. We're going to talk a little hoops. Ronald Dupree, back in the early 2000s, an outstanding LSU basketball player, led him to the NCAA tournament one year. Now he's back with the LSU men's basketball program as general manager. We'll catch up with Ronald Dupree when we come back on Tiger Rag Radio.
July is jumping at your East Baton Rouge Parish Library. Discover new ways of researching your family history. Learn how to market your small business. Enjoy programs and performances for all ages. We've got it all. For more details, go to ebrpl.com. That's ebrpl.com.
Now, back to Tiger Rag Radio, live from Super Chevy Dealers Studio.
Back here for more of Tiger Rag Radio. Jeff Palermo along with the editor of Tiger Rag Magazine, Glenn Guilbeau. Great guest coming up here on the Max Home Hotline, former LSU basketball star and now back with the LSU men's basketball program. That's Ronald Dupree joining us here on Tiger Rag Radio. Ronald, thanks a lot for spending some time with us. How you doing?
Oh, I'm great, man. Finally in Baton Rouge, got the family here, moved in. I can't be more excited.
And you were working with the Milwaukee Bucks organization, correct? Before, did Matt McMahon call you or did you call Matt McMahon? How did that all work out?
Yeah, we had been, yes, to answer your first question, with the Milwaukee Bucks for 8 years or 8 seasons. This was my 8th year completing. Me and Matt, we reconnected. So surprising enough, when he first got the job, I just so happened to be down, and I think that was the Final Four when New Orleans hosted. And I had me and my wife, my 2 daughters, we were at the Tiger Cage, and I ran into him. And so,
wow,
that
was our first introduction.
That's
and it is. So we kind of, we weren't calling each other every day or not, but I've kind of kept an eye on the program and watching him. And then we came, I think it was February, we had the Sweet 16 reunion with our 2000 team, which was my freshman year. And Coach Mack came to the event. We had a walk-on and was able to reconnect with them then. And then I went to the SEC tournament to work it. And then I saw Coach again. So, yeah, man, it's more of an administration reach out, but also getting the blessing of Coach. And I just think it's a mutual thing that kind of all came together, at the right time.
And yeah, I got to talk to you at that reunion at Walk-Ons. That was cool. Little did I know that you'd be on the staff. But that was definitely a great night. But Ronald, how much impact are you going to have on the roster as Matt recruits portal players and over you got this Ron Zipper from Israeli guard Ron Zipper was added to the roster. Did you have something to do with him? Did you know about him?
Yeah, so by the time I got the job, I started in mid to late April. Majority of the team was kind of intact.
Right.
We had, I think at the time, we had Jalen Reed, Rob Miller, Curtis Gibbons coming back. And by the time I got the job and the portal was closing, Curtis hopped in. So we only had 2 returners versus 3.
Right.
And then the transfers that were already committed was done by Coach Mack's staff. And so the last few spots, we were able to acquire Ron Zipper, PJ, Carter, Pablo. If my memory serves me correctly, we were able to fill those last 3 roster spots. So I got a good taste of the market and the environment what we're in right now. So yeah, I'll have some say in the roster. But again, like me and Coach we'll be aligned together and we'll build this thing out. My job is to, have involvement in the roster moving forward. Obviously the cap and, what we have to spend, understand the market on transfers and even high school players, what they're worth, what we need to look forward to, and kind of strategically build out a plan and we can sustain success. And so there's some other, I guess, job description responsibilities as well, but that's kind of the gist of it.
What do you, as a basketball player, very great player at LSU, and you played in the NBA, what do you think of LSU's roster at the moment? How varied is it and multi-talented?
Yeah. So I would say from afar, look at the team last year, I would say this year's team has more substance in terms of character. We have some very bright people and men, young guys, obviously transfers with experience, but they have a lot of substance. My first initial call with all of them, a lot of the phone calls went way longer than 20, 25 minutes. We had extensive conversations. They were very, excited, but very curious on a lot of things. I would say our team has a great head on their shoulders, great heads on their shoulders.
Ronald,
and the talent, I think, go ahead. And the collective talent is better, in my opinion, from what I saw last year to seeing the workouts and seeing our team now. So I think you're going to get a more talented roster, and you're going to get a more high character roster.
What did you think of the SEC last year, putting so many teams in the NCAA tournament? Was that like a much better league than you remember playing in, or how did you view the conference as a whole last season?
It kind of reminded me of the times when I was playing here.
Okay.
When I was here, we had, I think, 7, 8, 6 or 7 teams made the tournament.
Right.
And at the time, that was a lot. It was a lot for a conference. There was really no nights off. And I felt it kind of reminded me of that, probably to more of an extent this year because of the many teams that were in. But the challenge would be with the revenue sharing now, it should cap the market in terms of spending, because obviously the SEC and a lot of those teams and programs spend a lot of money for their rosters, which resulted in NCAA berths. I think Oklahoma was probably the one that got in that, didn't spend a lot, and they just so happened to get in. But they had a lottery pick on their team who ended up really peaking at the right time for them. But those that spent in our league, the results were pretty much positive in terms of them having postseason aspirations and getting to the tournament.
Ronald, was this something that you envisioned as you spent several years in the NBA? Was this something that you wanted to do, be kind of a front office guy? Obviously, you got a bit of a taste of it in the NBA and now here in college basketball.
Honestly, I did not. I started coaching, when I stopped playing. My introduction in terms of post-playing career was coaching. Coach Johnny Jones gave me an opportunity and was coaching in college for, I think, 3 years. And I thought I'd be coaching for forever. And the Milwaukee Bucks opportunity came around. As a player, I had interest in the front office because when I was my time with the Pistons and Joe Dumars and Scott Perry and John Hammond, a lot of really good guys that put together a special team at the time in Detroit. A lot of those players and staff members I'm still close with. So that was as a player, I was like, man, I want to be in the front office. So I didn't envision that opportunity coming as soon as it did when I was coaching. So learning the front office side was just a different beast. You know what I mean? And it's a lot more strategic. It could be cutthroat. It could be a lot of things, but just the business of basketball, I learned a ton with my time there. So I was just envisioning, either transitioning in coaching again, or, you know, being able to be a general manager for an NBA franchise. And so when this opportunity came about, I think I don't think it hinders that or those opportunities to happen. I just think with this position, one, it's my alma mater.
Yeah.
I know where our program is, and just like me and the other guys that have put that jersey on, we want to see it in a better light.
Yeah.
We want to win. You know what I mean? This community wants to win.
Yeah.
You know, coming back to the reunion, a lot of familiar faces, a lot of excitement, a lot of passion is still here. And so that not knowing that this opportunity will present itself, but I could sense that just with our time here with our guys from that 2000 team. So yeah, it wasn't planned. I think it was like a God thing, man.
Yeah.
Just from me accepting the job and just how things have developed, and just personally how things have just gotten in place. You know, I just thank God for the opportunity, and it's a purpose thing for me, and it's a passion project for me. Just because, again, this is my school, it's my program, and I want to see it thrive at a high level.
How difficult is this job going to be, especially considering you're the first one handling it at LSU? So you're a pioneer, if you would. And then, like, when you're the general manager of an NBA team, you're like scouting other teams. You know, you got the trade deadline and you're making trades. Yeah. So you're seeing, like, you're not going to be like checking out Creighton versus Wichita State and be like watching that maybe and saying, well, who out of these guys, who might enter the transfer portal one day? You basically got to wait for that day to occur. So how hard is it to kind of scout, especially when it comes to the transfer portal? And once that portal opens, you got to jump on some of these guys quickly.
Yeah. To finish, I think the question you asked me previously, I look at this as an opportunity. It can be described as the Wild Wild West, and in many ways it is. But I think that's where the opportunity is. That's where, and again, a big part of taking this job was to establish a foundation for this program moving forward to operate in this climate of basically pro basketball. You know what I mean? In many ways. So, like, there's a lot of work to be done, even from a structure standpoint. You know, is collective bargaining going to happen? That helps, right? Because you're able to you know, hold these players to like multi-year deals, and then you get more consistency with rosters, so that brings in more connectivity with the fan base. You know, so it's great for everybody. And then there's ideas about, you know, the buyouts. You know, if lower major kids transfer up, there should be a price for that for the lower programs, you know, and that way they, you know, those schools at that level can embrace the process and try to churn out as many, you know, high D1 major prospects as possible, because they'll get the benefits from it, you know. So there's just a lot of more work to be done. But at the end of the day, like, it's just fun and it's a challenge. And again, this opportunity, you know, the experience that I'm getting so far is just something I would not have gotten in my current role in Milwaukee. And I just think it just prepares me better personally. And I think college basketball will be in a better place within the next 3 to 5 years, you know?
So you do have an NBA championship ring, though, right?
Yes.
Okay. Where do you keep that?
I keep it close. I keep it close.
That's awesome, man. Congratulations on returning back home to LSU. I know you're a Biloxi guy, but I know LSU is home for you, and we're looking forward to seeing what you and Matt McMahon can do when it comes to building out a roster that compete for SEC championships and Final Four appearances. So thanks a lot for your time.
Man, thanks for having me. We'll have many more of these.
All right.
Thanks, Ronald.
And Jeff, thank you. All right.
Ronald Dupree, former LSU basketball great, now the first ever general manager of the LSU men's basketball program. Late for a break. More coming up of Tiger Rag Radio from the Super Chevy Dealer Studio when we come back.
How you doing? This is Snoop Dogg.
Tiger Rag Radio.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, you are tuned in. Talk LSU sports, interviews, opinions, and your calls around the Tiger Nation.
Baton Rouge was a life for me, home with LSU Tigers.
Now more Tiger Rag Radio.
We love to score and get highlights and championships and play to win.
Tiger Rag Radio.
Back here on Tiger Rag Radio, Jeff Palermo, along with the editor for Tiger Rag Magazine, Glenn Guilbeau, as we continue on from the Super Chevy Dealer Studio. SEC Football Media Days next week. We only got a couple minutes left in this segment. Some of the hot topics you think Brian Kelly may hit on. I'm sure a lot of discussion will be on the season opener and finally winning one. He's not responsible for all of these losses here since 2000, but he is responsible for the last three. How do you see him? I mean, he gave such a great interview to Reese Davis on an ESPN podcast.
Yeah, that was good.
I'm kind of interested in on what new ground he'll plow. I'm sure, and we already know where he stands on a 9-game schedule, and he wants to play a team from the Big Ten every year. So it'll be fascinating to see what other subjects that he hits on.
Maybe not play a Big Ten team to open the season, right?
Play Nichols is what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. But no, I think he'll be asked a lot about Garrett Nussmeier.
Yeah.
He'll probably be asked about what he said about Arch Manning. You know, like, hey, let's hold the phone. He hasn't been a starter yet,
right?
Like Garrett has, and he'll probably be asked about the pressure to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
Finally, because he just hasn't made it since he's been there, and he's been a disappointment. There's no question.
This is such a big season. I mean, I've seen a couple of articles about coaches on the hot seat, and Brian's not on there, that's for sure. But man, if they don't get there, they don't get into the 12-team playoff with the amount of resources that have been poured into this roster, and considering a returning starting quarterback who threw 4,000 yards. It's not going to be pretty for BK if they don't get into the 12-team playoff. We'll take a break, wrap up the show when we come back from the Super Chevy Dealer Studio.
Tiger Rag Radio.
The details do matter. Every step, every hand on the ground, every route, everything that we do has a purpose. We are really focused, and our attention to detail is going to be unmatched.
Back here on Tiger Rag Radio, Jeff Palermo along with Glenn Guilbeau as we are broadcasting from the Super Chevy Dealer Studio. I want to thank all our guests here tonight, starting off with Ryan Clary from Locked On Nats. Then we heard from Zach Nagy from LSU on SI, David Franklin, Haynesville football coach, Chris Gordy, Locked On SEC podcast, and then Ronald Dupree joined us as well. So this is, I would say these few days here are maybe the slowest time of the year, right? But it's about ready to pick up. And
yeah.
It picks up on Thursday with the announcement coming from Lamar Brown, who is the 5-star defensive lineman from University High, making his decision in Baton Rouge at 12:15. And then we have the Major League Baseball draft. We'll find out, will Kade Anderson go number 1? Where will Anthony Ianson go?
Well, that's not till Sunday.
Sunday, right?
Sunday, right, yeah.
Sunday. And then the draft, of course, extends into Monday, and I think it still goes 3 days. I can't remember. I think it still goes all the way to Tuesday.
Yeah, I think it does.
Because it's 20 rounds, so they do the first couple rounds, I think, on Sunday, and then maybe 3 through 10 or something like that on Monday, and then 11 to 20 is on Tuesday. So there's all the high school signees from LSU. How many of those guys stick or decide to come to LSU instead of go pro? So you got all of that. And we talked about the decisions that Ethan Fry and Chase Shores have in front of them. And I think it's going to be very difficult for both of those. I think more so for Ethan Fry than Chase Shores. I think if I'm Chase Shores, I throw 100 miles per hour. I've had injury issues. I think I go to the Major League. I think I do pro ball. That's what I think I would do.
Yeah, and he was throwing 102 in Omaha. So,
yeah.
So people saw that for sure. But yeah, we're kind of in the valley now. We're done with baseball, and it's still a ways from football. But I did my column for the next Tiger Rag magazine. I got LSU going 10-2 this year.
Do you really?
Because I really don't. There's not a scary team on the schedule after Clemson.
Right.
And that's mainly because it's the season opener. But Clemson really looks like the best team on LSU's schedule because, Alabama's got question marks. Florida still does. Texas A&M does. So, and LSU plays at Ole Miss. That looks like a tough game because they haven't won there in a while. But I have them losing to Clemson and to Ole Miss, 10-2. That'll get them into playoffs.
Okay, yeah, I would. That would be good. That would be a good start for LSU to get to be 10-2, and that certainly should get them into the college football playoff. And there will be a lot of discussion next week on what it should look like as far as the college football playoff beyond this year, and when will the SEC go to 9 games? Because eventually that is certainly going to happen. And I'm interested to hear what a lot of the different coaches have to say, all the coaches have to say, and hear from all the players that will be speaking in Atlanta. So once you hit SEC Media Day, it's there's a lot of news that will be coming out. So looking forward to hearing. Ready for another season here, Glenn. What's great about when the LSU baseball goes all the way and plays the final game in the College World Series, the offseason's very short.
It is. Tell me about it. I think they ought to go to a 10-game schedule. Because I don't like the odd home and away.
Yeah. 2020, as bad as COVID was, we got to see a 10-game SEC schedule, and that was pretty cool. That was pretty cool. All right, that does it for our show. Todd Horn will be back with us next week. Glenn will be in Atlanta. But Jackson Blackman, myself, Jeff Palermo, thanks for listening to Tiger Rag Radio. For the latest when it comes to LSU, go to TigerRag.com.
Tiger Rag is everywhere. Online at TigerRag.com. Like us on Facebook at Facebook.com/TigerRag Magazine. Or follow us on Twitter at Tiger_Rag.